All right, good afternoon, folks. Thanks for joining us for today's noontime webinar all about rain barrels, a useful water stewardship tool, now for Colorado too. You're going to be hearing from Abby Burke. She is our Western Rivers Program Lead for Audubon Rockies. And for those of you who might not know me, I am Jamie Weiss, the Habitat Hero Coordinator for Audubon Rockies. So you are in the right spot if you came to today's presentation to learn about how Colorado is certainly a mighty progressive state on certain issues, but up until now it has been the only state in the country with a ban on residential rain barrels. As of August 10th, just a few weeks ago, rain barrels are out of the jailhouse in Colorado. And Audubon Rockies was an official supporter of legalizing residential rain barrels. We certainly believe rain barrels are useful tools to increase water stewardship, conservation, and for people to better understand the value of water. So if you want to know more about the 2-year story of rain barrel legalization and how you too can own and operate residential rain barrels legally, you are in the right spot for today's presentation. You're going to be hearing from Abby Burke, our Audubon Rockies Western Rivers Program Lead, who will certainly regale us with her knowledge over the next hour. Just a little bit of housekeeping items first. Your phone lines have been muted since we do have a good number of participants today. And we will also be accepting all the questions after the main presentation in our Q&A portion. So please use the chat feature on your toolbar to type those messages or questions directly to me throughout the session. Also, our recording will be available after today's presentation, just in case you have to cut out early, or if you want to pass this presentation along to other friends and family who might be find this presentation very valuable. Also, in our follow-up communication, we're going to send out some additional links and materials. That way, you're going to continue to learn about some other links that we'll send you, and then also about the Habitat Hero program as well. So, again, thank you so much for joining us, and because we have so much information to cover, we're just going to get started right now. So first thing, a little bit of background on the Habitat Hero program and how that ties in today's presentation on rain barrels. So our Habitat Hero program provides resources to community members and leaders to help them in planting gardens that are water-wise and that can support wildlife. So we encourage you to help us to bring conservation home, literally one garden at a time, and create these bird-friendly communities. And also to get you the recognition that you deserve through our certification program. So anyone can be a Habitat Hero, and the whole idea is making a positive impact in our Colorado and our Wyoming communities by increasing those natural areas, providing homes and food for wildlife, and creating those small areas of wildlife habitat that connect those larger green spaces together. So whether this be your typical residential yard, could be a few potted plants on a balcony, at a public park, or a schoolyard garden. So regardless of where your garden is located, the size or the design element, we believe in growing a healthier community. So if this sounds like you, then I encourage you to apply to receive that recognition that you deserve. And again, all of that information will be in our follow-up materials as well, since today the star is learning all about rain barrels. And learning about rain barrels and how to incorporate them into your Habitat Hero garden is a great stewardship tool. So a little bit about Abby Burke. I'm so excited to be able to co-host this presentation, not only with a colleague, but also a friend of mine as well. We have many shared interests, including our love for animals, whether that be from our birds or to our personal pets like dogs and, of course, horses as well. So thank you, Abby, for regaling us with your knowledge on rain barrels. She certainly brings a lifetime love of rivers, particularly of the Colorado River and its tributaries. Abby also promotes cultural change in water use and river conservation through interacting with government representatives, state and federal agencies, conservation organizations, businesses, and by recruiting and training community leaders. She has extensive ecological land management experience and is committed to advancing riparian habitat and stream resiliency through environmental river flow awareness, advocacy, and action. She is passionate about connecting people to their rivers. Abby most recently taught college courses in biology and environmental science, and previous to that was an environmental consultant for over 8 years. She is an awarded educator and an environmental steward. Abby holds a Bachelor of Science in Biology and an interdisciplinary Master of Education degree with both ecology and hydrology concentrations. As an avid whitewater kayaker, Abby enjoys time on the western rivers as often as possible, particularly her favorite, the Colorado River through Grand Canyon, hence this beautiful photo taken here. So, without further ado, let me hand over today's presentation, and so she can share her screen with you. Let me get that switched over for you. Abby, again, thank you for your knowledge all about rain barrels, and we're looking forward to hear all the information you have to share with us.
Oh, Jamie, thank you so much for that great introduction, and I really look forward to presenting today. Is my screen showing okay?
It looks fantastic.
Fantastic. All right, we will get going here. I want to thank again Jamie for the great introduction and just inviting me to present on one of our newest state victories here in Colorado. Living in a semi-arid, high-altitude environment requires all of us to be good stewards of the water that we use. And water is the West's most precious resource. And I see the legalization of rain barrels as a real victory for increased awareness and understanding of our personal water footprint. And rain barrels are an easy and very common sense way for homeowners to conserve and reuse water. So it's really my pleasure and privilege to share some of this information with you. And, you know, as we get going, I'm going to give you a little bit, a very kind of brief legal context for how we use water in Colorado. So just a little teeny bit about water law. Also, I'm going to share with you the story about rain barrel legalization. It did take 2 years to successfully be able to use rain barrels legally now in Colorado. I'm going to share with you also what the new law states and some tips for success in how to set up and use your new rain barrel. And we'll certainly conclude with some question and answer at the end. So please make sure that you type your questions into Jamie, and so we can have some good discussion here following our presentation. So why was it so tough for Colorado to legalize rain barrels? And first of all, I want to ask this question. Have you ever asked yourself who owns the rain that falls from the sky? In the West, this is a topic of serious discussion and lawmaking. Colorado is one of the only 2 states, Hawaii being the other, in which nearly all water flows out of the state. And water has always been very important for our state development, but it has also been crucial for the states downstream. All water that is in and eventually flows out of Colorado is already owned by someone else. Pardon me. And, you know, so welcome to the overwhelming and complicated web of water rights in our state and the relatively simple water cycle. So going back to 4th grade science for a moment, snow melt and rain flows downhill into rivers, creeks, and into stormwater infrastructure. It all ends up in our major rivers, you know, of course, like the South Platte, the Arkansas, the Rio Grande, the Gunnison, the Yampa, the Colorado River, you know, just to name a few. And farmers in cities all the way to either the Mississippi River or lower Colorado River basin depend on this water. So precipitation can also percolate into the groundwater system, and that supplies wells with, you know, many property owners using for drinking water or irrigation. And rainwater harvesting, as it's officially called, diverts this water potentially out of the normal system by capturing it in rain barrels for later use. Decision makers thought rain barrels were not too big of a deal if a few people did it, but if everyone collected rain, the river flow could potentially be altered. Therefore, according to the Colorado Division of Water Resources, prior to 2016, rain collection was illegal. This sounds pretty harsh, but we depend on precipitation that isn't always reliable. In fact, some part of Colorado is almost always in drought. And stormwater is owned a few times over by senior and junior water right holders. And we'll go into this in just a little more detail in a moment. But ultimately, it's just best to treat our most precious resource, water, with a lot of respect and caution. So Colorado is unique compared to other parts of the country. The use of water in this state and other western states is governed by what is known as the prior appropriation doctrine. This system of water allocation controls who uses how much water, the types of uses allowed, and when those waters can be used. A simplified way to explain this system is often referred to as the priority system, or first in time, first in right. In a nutshell, an appropriation is made when an individual physically takes water from a stream or well, and with a well, it's when it's legally available, and puts that water to beneficial use. The first person to have appropriated water and apply that water to use has the first right to that water within a particular stream system. So this person, after receiving a court decree verifying their priority status, and think of that just simply as a timestamp for water use, then becomes a water right holder. And that water right must be satisfied before any newer or younger water rights are filled. So in Colorado, the state engineer protects all assigned water rights. The process of allocating water to various water uses is traditionally referred to as water rights administration, and that's the responsibility of the Division of Water Resources. So water rights are purchased, and many senior or older rights have existed for almost a century. Senior water rights have priority over junior water rights, or newer, meaning a senior water right holder will get all of their water before the next fella in line who is more junior. As water becomes more scarce and low water landscaping grows in popularity, rainwater harvesting becomes a very attractive and common sense solution for water use. The 2009 Colorado legislative session produced a bill that allows limited rain collection for properties supplied by a well, and even then residents had to apply for a permit to do so. And unfortunately, rivers and streams do not have water rights of their own. Colorado does have an in-stream flow program, and that in-stream flow program is a water right that decrees a minimal amount of water needed to protect the environment to a reasonable degree, and of course in priority. So in-stream flows are very junior, 1973 or newer. These water rights often go unfulfilled because most of the stream systems have been over-appropriated, meaning that at some or all times of the year, a call for water, even by a senior water right holder, is not satisfied. So I've mentioned a little bit about groundwater and wells, and the Colorado Division of Water Resource regulates the drilling and the use of wells, which is, underground water. In the past, the lack of strict regulations caused a significant drop in the water table in some communities, creating problems for well users. Currently, new well permits are very restrictive. Most wells are used for households and are considered exempt from the administration within the water rights priority system. So wells require a permit from the state engineer and are limited to 15 gallons of water per minute. Excessive use of water can draw down the water in aquifers and cause wells, either yours or a neighbor's, to go dry. Most private wells drilled on or after May 8th of 1972, it's a very important date, on properties that are smaller than 35 acres, are permitted for household use only. So meaning water can be used only inside the home. Water cannot be used to irrigate gardens, livestock, wash your car, or any other outside use. The theory behind this is that household use only uses roughly 10% of the water, and the rest returns to recharge the water cycle. So legal rainwater usage would be very helpful if you had a household only well. And prior to August of this year, the only way you could legally use rainwater in Colorado was with a rain garden. And so rain gardens are a fabulous way to help catch stormwater runoff and purify or filter that runoff before it enters your local stream or river. And Colorado State University has a great publication on rain gardens. If you would like to know more on how to make your very own native water filtering habitat, Jamie will be including the CSU rain garden document with the follow-up to today's email in presentation. So unfortunately, first time around, when rain barrels were up in our Colorado State Legislative, it was 2015 and it didn't go. Rain barrels failed the first time through. So rain barrels first arrived in the state legislature in 2015, and Audubon Rockies was an official supporter alongside of our partner organizations. Unfortunately, the bill died on the Senate calendar last year after passing out of the House. The argument against rain barrels in 2015 could boil down to this. A cattle rancher or farmer downstream owns the right to that water, so by catching it in a rain barrel, you're stealing it. Did that really make any sense? No. But scientifically speaking, it doesn't make much difference if any particular drop of water enters the groundwater now, or if it hangs around in a rain barrel for a few weeks first until it's used on your landscape. And either way, the amount captured is literally a drop in the bucket. Dr. Larry Rosner, a civil and environmental engineer professor at Colorado State University, told at a legislative hearing at the state capitol in 2015, it would take a lot of water before it made a significant impact. It should be noted that at the time, while every state in the West has similar water right laws, Colorado was the only one banning rain barrels. So ultimately, due to strict interpretations and speculative fears that rain barrels could bring down Colorado's water rights system, the bill died. But in 2016, we finally had success. The timing for rain barrel legalization was only off by 1 year. Coloradans really wanted rain barrels. And through a huge amount of support from voters, conservation organizations, state legislators, finally, House Bill 16-1005 passed the State House on February 29th and passed the State Senate on April 1st by a 27-6 vote. Senator Jerry Sonnenberg, a Republican out of Sterling, Colorado, who's also the chair of the Senate Agricultural, Natural Resource, and Energy Committee, was a vocal critic and a tough opponent of the rain barrel bill, both in 2015 and 2016. His concerns were grounded in a strict interpretation of Western water law and the system of prior appropriation. He argued that rain barrel use will cut into senior water rights, especially for agricultural uses. Supporters of the bill pointed to a study from Colorado State University demonstrating that the use of rain barrels would not decrease the amount of surface runoff going to downstream users, ultimately weakening Senator Sonnenberg's argument. This year's version of the bill, Democrats made compromises that Republicans wanted. First, acknowledging state water law to clarify senior water rights and giving the state engineer's office regulatory authority. And the compromises were supported by former opponents, such as the Colorado Farm Bureau, who were concerned also about the impacts of downstream users who hold very costly and old senior water rights. So ultimately, 2016 was finally the time for rain barrel success. So with a swipe of the governor's pen, it is now legal for Coloradans to collect the rain that falls from their very own roofs. The move made Colorado the final state in the country to sanction rain barrels. So what does this new law actually state? What can you use? And so the law defines a rain barrel as a means, a storage container with a sealable lid that is located above ground outside of a residential home and used for collecting precipitation from a downspout or a rooftop. No more than 2 rain barrels with a combined storage capacity of 110 gallons, so basically like 2 55-gallon rain barrels, or less can be utilized. Precipitation is collected from the rooftop of a building that is used primarily as a single family residence or a multi-family residence with 4 or more units. The collected precipitation is used for outdoor purposes, including irrigation of lawns and gardens, and the collected precipitation is used on the residential property on which the precipitation is collected. So that is the official language right out of House Bill 1005. It also goes further to state a little more that a person shall not use precipitation collected under this article or in a rain barrel for drinking water or indoor household purposes. So again, the bill goes a little further. That's kind of the meat and potatoes, if you will, of the bill. But the bill goes on in different sections and does give the state engineer the ability to dictate when it is okay and not okay to collect rainwater. So if we enter into a severe drought condition, the state engineer may say, okay, anybody who's operating a rain barrel, you need to stop until we allow you again in the future when better precipitation regimes come back. And also there's a section, Section 3, which prevents a homeowners association from prohibiting a unit owner from using rain barrels for precipitation collection. So I'm going to say that one more time. So in real language, not so much legalese, that means a homeowners association must allow you to use a rain barrel. So, so really some great victories with this particular bit of legislation. Okay. So rain barrels, I really see them as helping to reduce the burden on rivers. And I don't believe that rain barrels will solve our water shortage crisis in Colorado, but we see rain barrels as very valuable tools to increase water stewardship and instill a water conservation ethic, which is very needed, especially here in the Front Range in Colorado. You know, rain barrel users can better understand the precipitation cycles. When it rains, how much it rains, what a gallon of water looks like, feels like, how heavy it is. And most importantly, that water is not an infinite resource, which is such critical understanding all across the West. So now that you're all excited about harvesting rainwater legally, let's talk about how you can get started and some tips for success that, you know, really once rain barrels are set up, they're pretty well problem-free if you just follow a couple rules. And I'm happy to take you through that. So there are so many different types of rain barrels that you can choose from. And there are even some do-it-yourself kits online. Just remember that that storage capacity cannot be greater than 110 gallons at a time. And so once you've decided on the style, the color of your rain barrel, installing a rain barrel is very easy, and you can certainly do it yourself. I don't want to, you know, to jinx anyone, but I believe that you could be up and running with a rain barrel within an hour. So we're going to talk about a few key steps to install and successfully use your rain barrel. If you ever wanted to know how, basically how much rainwater you could expect to collect from your roof size, here's a couple little equations. And so you can calculate your rainwater collection potential with the following formula. Basically, 1 inch of rain on 1,000 square feet roof yields 623 gallons of water. And, or you can also think about a cubic foot equals, it's a 12-inch by 12-inch by 12-inch cube, equals roughly 7.48 gallons. And just so there are some nice little calculations that you can kind of think about how much your rain barrel can actually hold, what your roof may yield, and that will help you also in deciding a couple of the next steps, which the next step being location for your rain barrel. Okay? So when you're setting up your rain barrel, the very first step on your road to rain barrel usage is to figure out the best location. And so here are a few things to consider when choosing the location of your rain barrel. First, determine which downspout is ideal for connecting to your rain barrel. You want to be thinking about, is this downspout close to sites that you want to water? Does this particular site, does it get in the way of the access of any doors or paths or air conditioning units or other equipment that you might have? Also think about your household traffic patterns. And also I want you to consider where your rain barrel will overflow. So if you catch enough rainwater that's beyond the capacity of your rain barrel to hold, there is an overflow. And you could either attach a second rain barrel to that first barrel to allow it to overflow and fill the second barrel, or you could even use a soaker hose, which would allow for some slow release of the rain barrel over time. But you want to make sure that your overflow outlet doesn't release water within 6 feet of your foundation. So just be thinking about all these different ideas as you're getting excited to start using rain barrels. Another decision that you're going to need to make, not only the color, the style of rain barrel, the location of it, but it's also very important to choose the proper diverter. And so a diverter will be literally the mechanism attached to your downspout, which will transfer that water that would have gone down the gutter into your landscape, into the rain barrel to be held until you're ready to use it. So selecting a diverter, there are lots of different options. A standard diverter is shown on the lower right and is very handy if you can't get your rain barrel maybe directly against the downspout. A metal diverter, such as the Save the Rain diverter, is shown on the left side of your screen. A flexible downspout extension is shown in the center and is readily available at your local hardware store. Also a great option if you can't get your rain barrel exactly next to the base of your downspout. Or you could use a hard or rigid downspout with an elbow, and that's shown on the upper right of your screen. Really, the type of diverter you choose is a personal choice, or it might be dictated by the location of your rain barrel. So if you can't get that rain barrel next to your downspout, chances are, depending on that distance, you're going to need some kind of flexible extension or a flexible extension diverter. Depending on the roof type and exposure to air pollution or contaminants, you may want to choose a special diverter called a first flush diverter. Asphalt roofs are good, but can tend to accumulate air pollutants, while a metal roof tends to shuck those contaminants a little easier. The first flush diverter works to divert the flow off your roof into a side chamber that can be separated before filling your rain barrel. So this first flush that is captured can contain most of the contaminants from your roof before you begin filling up your rain barrel. And this first flush diverter is available online. I haven't seen anything like this locally in local hardware stores, but certainly check it out online. Next, once you have your rain barrel, you've selected your diverter, you're going to start gathering some of your tools. And some of the tools of the trade that you'll need to successfully install your rain barrel will be a screwdriver that matches the screws on your downspout, a hacksaw, a straight edge, a marker, some tin snips, and a piece of cardboard. And while you're at it, I'm always I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. I like to make sure everything is level, and it's going to be very necessary for you to use a level as you're preparing the foundation for your rain barrel, so you might as well grab that while you're getting all of your tools together. So, step 3, the foundation. The base where you're going to place your rain barrel must be level. And you're going to have to prepare this space by clearing any debris around your desired location for your rain barrel. It's a good idea to use gravel as the base for your leveling, and again, you can always use your level to make sure that that gravel is as level as you can possibly get it. The bottom of the rain barrel, be thinking about this as well, should be higher than your watering site. Rain barrels are gravity feed, and so you're going to want to elevate it at a height that you could put a watering can or jug beneath the outflow, and that will also give it an easy outflow for any hoses that you may attach to the rain barrel. To elevate that rain barrel, you could make a base out of paving stones or cement blocks or pressure-treated lumber. And I've also seen it a couple places online where you can also purchase a pre-made base. So you have lots of different options in how to elevate your rain barrel. But most importantly, the base must be level and stable. You'll want to verify with the level and make any necessary corrections, and also by placing your empty barrel on your foundation and checking for any instability. I can't stress this enough. It's a must to have a level and stable foundation for your rain barrel, because remember, 55 gallons of water weighs almost 500 pounds. So you want that base in your rain barrel to be completely stable and safe. So once your rain barrel is in place, you've got your level foundation, you've got your elevated base, place your rain barrel onto this base, and using a straight edge, you're going to want to mark where your diverter will be installed. And of course, this will depend on which diverter you have chosen. And regardless of which diverter you choose, you'll need to place the diverter higher than the height of your rain barrel, or it won't fill. So no matter how hard you try, water doesn't naturally flow uphill. The only exception to that is, a little saying we have in the water world, that water will flow towards money, and that's regardless, excuse me, of elevation. So some considerations. Make sure all your measurements for diverter installation are taken while the rain barrel is in place. And if you choose a flexible or rigid elbow diverter, the end of the spout should be only a ½ inch to 1 inch away from the top of the barrel to reduce any splash. And so once all your measurements are complete, you're going to remove your rain barrel from that level and steady base, and you'll need to have access to the downspout to cut the lower portion away. Once you remove your rain barrel, prepare to cut away your downspout with a hacksaw. You'll probably have to unscrew a downspout brace or two below your diverter measurement mark. And here's a helpful tip. Place a piece of cardboard behind the downspout and between the spout and your house to protect your house if your cut has a little too much gusto. So it'll protect your siding. Make sure to keep that cutaway downspout, because depending on your diverter, either the standard diverter or the Save the Rain diverter, you'll be reattaching this below the diverter. And if you are using a flexible downspout or rigid elbow diverter, you'll be reinstalling the lower downspout for winter. You're going to want to fit your diverter into the downspout, and your diverter should fit very snugly. And again, installation and attachment of the diverter will depend on which one you've chosen. Connecting the downspout and, and the discarded, let me try that again, connect the downspout and the discarded bottom part that you've cut away. This can help stabilize, but again, that's going to be dependent upon which diverter you've chosen. You'll need to do this particularly for a standard diverter or the Save the Rain diverter. And finally, last but not least, within about an hour of preparation and installation, you are ready to connect your rain barrel to the diverter and hope for rain. So a couple tips for success on your rain barrel journey. Rain barrels typically operate pretty much trouble-free, but I want to share a few tips with you. First, you're going to want to clean your gutters at least once a year, and maybe more if you have lots of trees near your roof. It's always easiest to ensure little clogs don't become big ones. So regular gutter maintenance is very helpful. You also want to make sure that you're using your rain barrel, that you're using it, that it's emptying regularly, because a full rain barrel might as well not even be there. So make sure that you're using the water harvested from your rain barrel on your landscape to water your native plants and vegetable gardens regularly. And again, also remember to think about overflow. We mentioned it just a little bit ago, but you could connect a second barrel or use a soaker hose to regularly empty your rain barrel and also to water the landscape, of course. And always use a screen to reduce any debris and mosquito usage. Other ways to reduce the chance that your rain barrel becomes a mosquito farm. First, again, most commercial rain barrels tend to always have mosquito netting built in so that the mosquitoes can't get in there in the first place. Also, this is a safety issue. Don't ever leave a barrel with no top on it. This could be hazardous for kids, birds, other small wildlife, and pets. You never know what visitors you might get. And so if by rare chance you would get a mosquito infestation, you could use what's called a mosquito dunk. Dunks are safe for fish, for troughs for livestock, for bird baths. Dunks contain a biological toxin to mosquito larvae. It is the only mosquito product that uses BTI, which is a bacteria that's deadly to mosquito larvae but harmless to other living things. BTI specifically targets mosquitoes, killing mosquito larvae before they become biting, flying, disease-carrying adults. So mosquito dunks are safe to use around people, around pets, birds, wildlife, and fish. One of the biggest things that you need to remember as you're using your rain barrel, you need to make sure to winterize your rain barrel. So the best time to winterize your rain barrel is on or right before the first frost, and certainly before the first freeze. So don't let this be you. Disconnect the rain barrel, drain the barrel, and use the last bits of water for your landscape. Depending on your diverter, you will also want to remove your diverter and connect it with the lower portion of your downspout. Once drained, you could move the rain barrel into a shed or a garage if space is limiting. You could also just flip the barrel upside down and make sure to place something heavy, a heavy weight on top so that the wind might not blow it around. So many different options, but you will have to winterize a rain barrel. And so make sure that you get out there, get your legal rain barrel going up to 110-gallon capacity, water your native plants and your vegetable gardens, and I wish you happy rain barreling. So get out there and do it. So Jamie, that's all I've got with rain barrels today.
Wow, thank you so much, Abby, for that fantastic presentation. Let me pull the screen back on over here, and we'll jump into our Q&A portion. Let me Okie dokie. Looks like we're all set with the screen sharing back on our end. So again, Abby, thank you so much for that presentation. It was so engaging, informative, and I really like the background and the history behind all of it and where we have come. And it's so great to see that Audubon Rockies really supported this initiative. So thank you for your work to getting us where we are today.
Oh, my pleasure. And thanks for everyone sweating through all the water rights, but I get so many questions as to why it was so hard to legally collect rainwater that fell on your roof. And so it really takes a little bit of background to understand some of our water laws, to just kind of see why we were unfortunately the last to the party for rain barrels for the state. But we have them now. So thanks again. I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Great. Well, I'm sure there are some folks that have some questions on the materials that you presented today. So we'll open it up at this time to begin our Q&A. We have got some questions during the time, but feel free to continue using that chat feature. You can either send it to the group or to myself, and we'll put that in the queue for the questions. If we are unable to get to all your questions today based on time, feel free to give us shoot us an email. I have both our contact information, also the website up, and I'll leave that up during the Q&A, so feel free to jot that down as well. So the first question that we'll get to is from Andrew, and the question was, does rainwater harvesting help or hurt our river flows overall? Isn't it good to keep it out of our stormwater systems?
Okay. No, Andrew, that's a great question, and was certainly brought up not only in 2015 but in 2016 in the different legislative hearings. And you know, the study that in 2016 it was Dr. Reagan Wascom from CSU who discussed about how there's really no difference to river flows, because certainly as we've talked about, our water is simply, you know, if you see water in a river, it's going somewhere to do a job, maybe 4, 5, 6 jobs before that water exits our state. And so that was a key concern, certainly with the legalization of rain barrels. But through, again, the study from CSU, they came back and said that it really wouldn't make any difference. And an interesting thought that I don't think people had previously thought about in 2015, was brought up in the 2016 hearings, was that, you know, these rain barrels are being utilized on residential properties. We have roofs, driveways, sidewalks, all these impervious surfaces that actually keep water from getting in the ground. And so ultimately, because of these development surfaces, the hard surfaces don't let rainwater get into the ground or easily, haven't we given rivers a little more water? Because the runoff happens so quickly, more of it goes actually into the rivers. And so that was a very interesting comment. But I believe your comment is as far as it hurting rivers, it's, and again, coming from my stream ecologist hat here, that any time that water can naturally flow over the landscape, be filtered by plants on its way to the local downhill creek, stream, river, that's always beneficial. You're always going to be able to filter out some contaminants. And so by holding up, by using your rain barrels, you know, let's say that we've kind of caught some of those contaminants off of the roof, in your rain barrel, you're allowing those contaminants to actually be filtered by your landscape as you're applying your rain barrel water to your garden, to your lawn, wherever it might be. So hopefully that answers the question, but it's always a great question, and thanks for thinking about the water cycles here in Colorado.
Perfect. That was a great question, Andrew, and a great answer, Abby. Here's another good one. Question. I noticed people using rain barrels before they were legal. So what would the consequence have been if someone had turned them in or if they were caught?
Oh, absolutely. And you know, Jamie, as we were talking a little bit before, I've had several friends actually be using rain barrels for years before they were legalized here in 2016. And you know, it's there were no rain barrel police. However, if someone had turned you in for using a rain barrel illegally prior to August 10th of 2016, you might have gotten slapped with a $500 fine. And that is the only kind of punishment that I had come across that was technically would have been the fine for using rain barrels out before legalization. And I always have folks ask me, well, why were they for sale then in, you know, the local hardware stores or the local, you know, farm supply stores? And, you know, it always depended upon, you know, folks in stores would sell rain barrels never asking how you were going to use them. Just you could go ahead and purchase them. Then the merchant is free of any obligation, and just assuming that you had a well that was older than 1972, and you're using them legally. But certainly, yeah, no rain barrel police historically or present. And quite frankly, I'm not sure if there was ever a $500 fine issued. That would be a great thing just to kind of, for my own curiosity to find out, but that would have been the ultimate penalty.
Great. Well, here's another question from Andrew, and his question is, it says, is it possible to connect a rain barrel to irrigation like sprinklers? Maybe this requires a specific pump?
Rain barrels typically, of course, are gravity fed, and depending on the sprinkler that you would use, you could probably drain a 55-gallon or even a 110-gallon capacity container fairly quickly. You could certainly apply a pump to that, unless you could elevate the rain barrels high enough that your gravity feed would be plenty of pressure to supply through a hose and ultimately through a sprinkler. So absolutely be creative. I'd love to know if you do that and what your success rate might be.
Perfect. Abby, that parlays into actually a personal question that I have. You mentioned that 110 gallons of rainwater might be emptied out pretty quickly if you use sprinklers. So I'm curious, what could you expect to really accomplish with 110 gallons of rainwater? How much can you actually be watering your landscape?
Oh yeah, no, that's a great question. All this build up to legalization of rain barrels, where is it really going to do? And some of the calculations or the measurements that I had come across is that you could expect to irrigate about 180 square feet, and that's roughly about a 15 by 15 area of either vegetable garden or lawn. So your 110 gallons could adequately irrigate that area. And of course, depending upon our precipitation amounts, which are very unpredictable, it's always best to leave some capacity in your rain barrels to store little showers. Oftentimes in the summertime we have plenty of kind of monsoon storms that come through that could generate a lot of water. So my suggestion is to always keep an eye on that weather report. If you think that there's a surefire bet that we're going to have a good rainstorm, you may want to go out there and just go ahead and irrigate that vegetable garden, irrigate your lawn, put the water on your native plants, and be ready to capture another 110 gallons for the next rain event. And even if you talked about overflow, how you could connect one rain barrel to another to accomplish that 110 gallon storage capacity, you always want to make sure that you have an overflow even off of that last barrel. So making sure that overflow is directed someplace useful would be really helpful as well, especially if we have a big rain event somehow or somewhere.
Now, Abby, would there be any concern of, say, overwatering if you're talking about emptying your current status of the rain barrel in preparation of a large storm? Would there be any concern, especially if you're using native plants that are have co-evolved with our harsh landscape and our pretty short or minimal water supply? Would that be overwatering them to empty a rain barrel and then have an additional rain, natural rain?
Absolutely. No, that's a great thing to be thinking about, because maybe that would be a wonderful problem to have, that we have too much water. Using the rain barrels, and as like you say, with our native plants, which really don't require a lot of water, especially after they're up and running, for a couple years and well established. My suggestion would be to kind of give some opportunity to kind of deep water some of your trees. Trees certainly have an access to much deeper water profile in the soil, and a little more tolerant of additional water, which will just end up perking down and hopefully getting some good deep watering into those deepest roots of the trees. But just my suggestion and advice. I'd love to know how folks get creative in using their rain barrels and the successes and lessons that they've learned along the way. So we're all learning about this together.
Great. And I think we have time for one more question, and this is on chickens. So someone might be keeping chickens for, say, egg production, and they need to regularly provide clean water for them. I understand that rainwater must be used for outdoors, and of course chickens are kept outdoors in an enclosed coop. So could you potentially use rainwater collected in a rain barrel to provide water for chickens?
Oh, it's a great question, and it's, you know, first of all, I love how many people are keeping chickens now. I see them quite regularly. Several of my friends and neighbors also keep chickens. And you might be surprised to hear that the answer to that question is no. You cannot legally water your livestock, chickens included, with the rainwater collected from a rain barrel. Within the statute of the bill passed of House Bill 1005, it explicitly says that the water collected in the rain barrel can be used only, one, on the residence that the rain was collected on. That rainwater must be used on the property, and it must be for outdoor landscape purposes only. So the methodology behind that, I believe, is, we talked a little bit about maybe some of the contaminants that could, come off of your roof and whatnot. But I think just to kind of level the playing field, that decision makers figured, a landscape use only, that water would have gone from your roof into your landscape anyhow. So keep it with its most pure intent of how it would have been used. So, yes, you are not allowed to fill troughs to water livestock, including chickens, or filling dog water bowls or anything like that with this rainwater. It's purely for outdoor landscape use only.
Great. Abby, wow, your wealth of knowledge is just unbelievable, and I can't thank you enough for not only your fabulous presentation, but being able to navigate around some of those difficult questions. Again, here's our contact information, but I wanted to leave you with some final thoughts on some other ways to stay engaged with our program, some other upcoming webinars and events. I hope you liked this noontime webinar presentation. We like to keep this as an option for folks that might be working or have some of those busy schedules. So being able to join us from the comfort of your home or at your desk might be a great option for you. We have 2 more coming up in our mini webinar series. The next one is on September 7th, again at noon. And this will be presented by John Zuzi from Rim River Farms and Gardens, all on garden photography. It's going to be a beginner to intermediate level floral photography webinar, explaining the different types of cameras, their lenses, so even if it is your iPhone that you're going to be using to take pictures with, those simple techniques to use and capture exquisite garden photographs. Also, he'll focus on topics on how to develop a keen eye, say for natural lighting effects, the framing and composition, and of course the use of some basic camera settings and some do's and don'ts, some tips and techniques. Our last event in the mini webinar series is on September 21st. Again, another Wednesday noontime slot. This will be presented by Amy Yarger. She's the horticulture director for the Butterfly Pavilion. And this will be all about creating year-round habitat for pollinators. Healthy pollinator habitat provides food, shelter, and some other resources in the summer, but also the rest of the year too. So she's going to be talking about some common but underappreciated native pollinators and how you can help them 365 days a year and 24/7. So those will be some fun webinars. And we also have 2 hometown habitat movie showings. We're going to be doing a movie showing and a panel discussion. The first will be on September 11th, and that will be at the Boulder Public Library. And then on October 18th at the Denver Botanic Gardens. If you're not familiar with the movie Hometown Habitat, Stories of Bringing Nature Home, it is a 90-minute environmental education documentary. It's by award-winning directors Catherine Zimmerman, and it features the widely known author and entomologist Dr. Douglas Tallamy, who is a professor out of the University of Delaware. He's most known for his work on quantifying how the importance of native plants are critical to the survival and vitality of local ecosystems. And Habitat Hero Program can hang their little hat on this. We were actually filmed in May of 2015 for additional footage in this film. We were filmed at an educational workshop and a planting event at Bass Garden Center and Nursery up in Fort Collins. So we're honored to be selected as one of only 8 inspiring stories in this film on community commitment to conservation landscaping that really illustrates Talamy's vision of showing how humans and nature can coexist with some mutual benefits. Also, another way to stay involved or engaged with the program, we encourage you to apply to become a Habitat Hero. We have a new component of the application process this year with the tiered approach, the bronze, silver, and a gold. I guess because of the Olympics, we wanted to model that this year. But this is really to highlight people that might be just starting out wildscaping that very first section of their yard, kind of replacing some turf grass with some native plants. But it also might be for those veterans that are wildscaping that very last corner of the yard. And with today's presentation, learning all about implementing rain barrels, certainly that is a great stewardship tool and would be great to put in your Habitat Hero application. For more information on that, we'll also be sending out the follow-up email that will address all of this. But for more information, please check out our webpage that has a new FAQs on the application process, including some tips and components that make up the Habitat Hero Garden, and also what is included in your extensive benefits package as well. So again, a super big thank you for joining us today, and a thank you to Abby for that informative, engaging presentation. We really hope
Jamie,
that you
found my pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, yes, you're welcome. We really hope that you found that rain barrels are a great stewardship tool. And with all those great tips that Abby provided, you'll be able to go home and start in an hour. She did quote an hour. You'll be getting that up and running.
Very good. My best wishes for an hour, but I really think that you can do it.
And hopefully that truly inspires you to implement them into your garden. And remember to make sure to apply to become a Habitat Hero. So again, without further ado, thank you for everyone for your time joining us and for Abby's delightful presentation. Abby, any final words?
No, I just want to thank everyone for their time and wanting to become better water stewards. And I'd love to know your stories of using rain barrels, what you've noticed in your water consumption and your water usage. Let me know stories of how you've used your rain barrels and how they've helped you, how they've helped your landscape, and any lessons learned along the way. I'm always happy to pass on information to folks. But again, just my wholehearted thanks for you sharing your lunch hour with us today.
Thank you all. Everyone enjoy the rest of your day.